that's like, you know, stand in the elder donuts and the, you know, the dancers and the like move into the lanes and the, you know, bullet hells-esque things where it's like that's not really your character as much. Like, but are you okay with the idea that those kill you?
Yo, what's up, chefs? Got another banger for you today, coming in the form of a big update for my Whirling / Lich build. First, let me just quickly clarify that this video is specifically going to focus on showing you how to optimize the build to the point that you can just face roll T4 Arbiter and T4 Simulacrum. We're not going to talk about mapping, regular pinnacle bosses, or anything like that. If you're looking for a full build guide, I implore you to go check out the previous video I made. Should be popping up on your screen right now. Moving on to this build update though, as always, you can of course find a full Mobalytics planner down in the description. This one's super detailed. I've got all the different setups for the different encounters, showing you all the gear you're going to need. There's even an Incinerate loadout as well, with a bunch of extra details down here at the bottom. Make sure to pay attention to these. Also shows you how to manage your spirit costs, so there should be no confusion on how much spirit you're going to need. You're going to need 138 exactly, no less, no more. Obviously, the skill gems are covered, and also it's got the different passive tree setups for the different types of content, Arbiter and Simulacrum. With that being said, Mobalytics is still not properly picking up the From Nothing diamond, little like ring down here. For that reason, for the passive tree specifically, I'd recommend you come up here to the Path of Building code, click copy code. From there, all you've got to do is open up Path of Building. You can make a new import, paste the code right here, import, and now you're good to go. If you come down here to the bottom left, you can't see it right now, but I'll move my camera really quick. Come down to the bottom left, you can change the passive trees. So here we're on the Arbiter setup, as you can see. Change it, we go to the Simulacrum setup. You can see the different types. Also keep in mind for the items section up here at the top left, once you come to the items, make use of the item sets. So there's a Whirling / for Simulacrum, Whirling / for Arbiter, and then there's the Incinerate setup as well. Outside of that, everything else is taken care of for you, so you should be good to go. Just make sure you use the different passive trees and the different item sets. Everything should start to make sense. At this point, I'm going to assume you've watched the full build guide. So the first thing we're going to talk about is actually just 2 updates to the build that aren't specific to T4 Simulacrum or Arbiter. They're just general improvements. I'd recommend them for all content. The first of which is actually going to be that we got a level 21 Incinerate gem. Let me actually swap this. Level 21 Incinerate gem, which is just a level 20 skill gem plus 1 level from Corruption. The only reason I'm mentioning this is because they're really cheap now, about 4 divines each. One day after posting my full build guide, one of these would have been about 16 div. So it's much cheaper now, really good bang for your buck. To give you an example or to compare it, the next cheapest way to get plus 1 level to our Incinerate would be to get a plus 4 Sun Splinter. We're still sitting on a plus 3, and a plus 4 Sun Splinter is running about 16 to 18 div right now. So you're getting the same value from just getting a corrupted Incinerate, but it's only 4 div instead of 16 to 18. And then everything after Sun Splinter just gets considerably more expensive, going for plus 5 or 6 Fire Flower, or going for a Prism of Belief Diamond. Both of those are very expensive, not recommended for a low budget setup. And the second update is going to be the unique gloves, Doedre's Tenure. This is basically just going to be a free 100% or more spell damage if you want to get a corrupted version. Naturally, it's just 100%, and those are extremely cheap. If you want to get a corrupted version with more, it's going to be a tiny bit more currency, like 1 div, give or take. But you're fine with the 100% version, and those are super cheap, like I said. We're going to be using this with our Incinerate setup, of course. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that process one more time for anybody that's still confused. Whether you're about to do a map, pinnacle encounter, boss, etc., before you go into the portal, you're going to want to equip your Crown of the Victor, your Fire Flower, and your Doedre's Tenure. At that point, you can go ahead and go into the portal. So for this example, I'll go into the Twisted Domain. Of course, make sure your Incinerate is locked to weapon set 2, as you can see right here. From that point forward, let me go ahead and move my cam back really quick. From that point forward, you're just going to pop a flask just to give you a little bit extra mana regen. Then you're going to channel Incinerate up to 8 stacks. You're going to pick up the Burning Ground with your Whirling Slash. And now you can re-equip your regular items. Super easy. And from this point forward, you're only using Whirling Slash. I've gotten a lot of comments that are like of people being confused about this. Whether you're using WASD or click to move, I don't believe it matters. I've tried both. What's important is that you're not left clicking or using WASD. So my Whirling Slash keybind is my side mouse button over yonder on my thumb. All I press for this entire Twisted Domain, up to Zesht, including killing Zesht, everything, the only thing I'll press is Whirling Slash. That's how I move, that's how I kill things, etc. If I want to move faster, I throw on an attack speed spear. And, you know, if I had the right setup, I'd be moving way faster, etc. This is not a mapping setup, so we're not super fast. But the point here is all you're going to press is Whirling Slash. Once you've killed the boss, or like, let's say some loot dropped on the ground. If some loot dropped on the ground, I could left click the loot and go pick it up. As long as I stay within my Whirling Slash, it doesn't break. So then, like, if there's loot over here, I go pick up the loot, bada bing, I picked up the loot, and then I just start Whirling Slashing again. That's how you make the build work, just to clarify any confusion. So, now that we've covered the 2 general updates for the build, and you should have a good understanding of how the build functions, let's go ahead and dive into how we optimize it for T4 Simulacrum and Arbiter. We're going to start with the Simulacrum stuff first because it's a bit easier, and pretty much everything that we use for Simulacrum can also apply to the Arbiter setup. And starting off with the famous Gloamgown, I know I've gotten a lot of questions about how this works and what it does for the build, but don't worry, I'm going to explain it all to you right now, and it can be pretty easily broken down into 2 categories. 1, it makes you immortal. I'm going to be perfectly honest, I have not died a single time since I got this build up and running. I've done 40 to 50 plus T4 Simulacrums. I've done multiple T4 Arbiters. You can face tank the T4 Arbiter one-shot mechanics if you set it up properly. And if you can face tank that, you can face tank anything. I mean, you can't die if you're using 5% brain power. You can use less than that in most scenarios as well. In addition to that, it's also going to give us Spirit, though, which we're going to need for this setup, and the Spirit part is much easier to explain, so let's start with that. So, you're going to need a Gloamgown with plus 38 Spirit or more, no less, to make everything function as intended. The reason we're going to need plus 38 Spirit is because the setup we're using for Simulacrum and Arbiter, ideally, is going to be Withering Presence, which is 30 Spirit, plus a 2 curse blasphemy. The 2 curses, each curse is going to be 54 spirit total if you have 20% quality. So for a grand total of 108 spirit cost for this blasphemy. I can actually show you. Let me go and put my Gloamgown on really quick. Let me turn my Withering Presence off. Let me turn my blasphemy off. You can see we're sitting at 140. If I turn it on, I should go down to 32 because we're using 138 of our spirit, or 108 of our spirit, my mistake. Not 138, 108 is coming from just blasphemy. 54 plus 54. In addition to that, we go and turn on Withering Presence, which is an additional 30 spirit, and you can see we have 2 left over because we have plus 40 spirit. So you need plus 38. In addition to all of that, as you'll notice, our blasphemy, it's messed up right now. It kind of resets sometimes, I think, when you change your chest piece. But your blasphemy should be set to weapon set 1. Your Withering Presence can be set to both weapon sets, and your Convalescence should be set to weapon set 2. In Convalescence, you're going to run Mysticism. This is important here because this is going to give you a free 30% increased spell damage for your Incinerate. The reason for this is because you weapon swap when you cast Incinerate. That's going to activate Convalescence, which is in turn going to activate Mysticism. I can prove it to you really quick. You can see we're sitting at 19,557 tooltip. If I take my Mysticism out, we go down to 18,370. So you're going to want to make sure you have a Mysticism in your Convalescence. And you have way more than enough spirit for this. It's 30 plus 45. So it's only 75 spirit total. On your second weapon set, you're more than good to go for that. Make sure you slot mysticism in there. So now that you understand the spirit side of it, let's go ahead and dive into how it makes us immortal. And to do that, let me just put on my regular chest piece to kind of illustrate the picture for you here. Generally speaking, when you're playing an energy shield build, and the way this works, like this build for mapping even operates this way, is you have your max energy shield, you have your energy shield recharge per second, and your energy shield recharge delay. The way this works is when mapping, you want to get this recharge delay number as low as possible, down to like 1 to 1.5 seconds. Then all you have to do is not take damage for 1 to 1.5 seconds. Your recharge will kick in and you'll start recovering your energy shield. That's how most builds operate. However, when we throw on Gloamgown, you'll notice that our energy shield recharge goes up to 19,000, but our recharge delay also goes all the way up to 10.6 seconds. So what this means in layman's terms is if we were to not take damage for 10.6 seconds, we would recharge over almost 200% of our max energy shield every second. So if we are recharging our energy shield, we are effectively immortal because we are just recharging. I mean, we have a recovery rate of almost 20,000 HP per second, making us nearly immortal. The question is, how do we do that? Because our recharge delay is 10.6 seconds, and it's not practical, especially in Simulacrum, to not take damage for a full 11 seconds nearly. And that is where Energy Barrier comes in. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of Energy Barrier and you've been trying to like put the pieces of the puzzle together, and I'm sure some of you already have, but for those of you that haven't, this is the key. Energy Barrier reads, energy shield recharge begins immediately and is not interrupted by damage for 2 seconds when stunned while using supported skills. I emphasized a lot of words there because it's kind of important. The thing you need to know here is you have to be actively casting Whirling Slash. So I would have to be holding down the button for this to work, and then I would have to get stunned while holding down the button. And what that would do is it would give me that energy shield recharge for 2 seconds uninterrupted. So for the next 2 seconds, I'm immortal. If I get stunned while using Whirling Slash, I cannot die. That is the important part. And on top of that, there is no cooldown for Energy Barrier. What does this mean? Well, as long as you get stunned every 2 seconds, you're permanently immortal. This is how it works in Simulacrum. Because in Simulacrum, I'm going to dive into this a little bit more. In Simulacrum, we're going to try and manipulate our stun threshold amount to get into the sweet spot where we're getting stunned roughly every 2 seconds. You don't want to go with 0 stun threshold, because what can happen is if you're literally getting stun locked, like you've got 5 Simulacrum mobs around you all smacking you at the same time, and you actually get stun locked, you can't use Whirling Slash, and after 2 seconds, you'll no longer be recharging energy shield, and then at that point, you're just going to die, because you can't physically start your Whirling Slash again to proc Energy Barrier again, because you're just stun locked. So there's a sweet spot. You want to get stunned roughly every 2 seconds. You don't want to get stun locked. If you're getting stunned every half a second, that's fine. You just can't move as much. So that's why for maps, like mapping in specific, I don't like to rely on Energy Barrier. And Gloamgown, I use a regular chest piece because I don't want to get stunned when I'm mapping. When I'm mapping, I just want to zip through the map, kill everything as quickly as possible. But in Simulacrum or Arbiter or these other things, I don't have to move a lot. You know, in Simulacrum, you're confined to an arena, and to be perfectly honest, in Simulacrum, I just want to close my eyes, hold the button down, and then collect the loot while I watch like a video on my second monitor, etc. So we don't care about move speed in Simulacrum. We don't care about, how often we get stunned, really. As long as we're not getting stun locked and we are getting stunned every 2 seconds, we're immortal. Everything is good to go, and you're gonna be blasting. And I'm sure you probably have a good understanding of how it works for Simulacrum now, but I'll just go ahead and illustrate it really quickly. I'm gonna jump into the Simulacrum here. There's a bunch of monsters waiting for me, and I'm not gonna use Incinerate. I'm just gonna use my regular Whirling Slash, so nothing is gonna die. But if you pay attention to my energy shield, you'll notice that I'm also just gonna be, sitting there permanently immortal. let me just go ahead and show you guys. I'll go ahead and load in. Here's all the monsters, and even with all of these monsters, I mean, it's an entire wave of simulacrum enemies right here. All I have to do is hold Whirling Slash, and I can't die. Obviously, nothing else is dying right now because I'm not using Incinerate, but this should illustrate the point of how immortal this build really is. So now let's go ahead and dive into the stun threshold sweet spot for Simulacrum. So, for most cases, Simulacrum and even just other things, generally speaking, you just run your passive tree up through here and pick up Dampening Shield, and you're going to be good to go. The important part here is that with Dampening Shield, you want no jewels with stun threshold on them. So you should have 0 jewels. I've got one sitting in my stash actually to show. You want no jewels with this stat line. Gain additional stun threshold equal to X% of maximum energy shield. That will throw off the number. It's not to say that you can't use them, but if you do use them, you need to take into account. Like if you've got 1 jewel with 12%, then you can't take Dampening Shield. In fact, you would have to take nothing else. So for most cases, Dampening Shield is going to be fine. If you're doing maps, Dampening Shield is fine. If you're doing Pinnacle bosses, Dampening Shield is fine. Even if you're doing Simulacrum, if you've got around 10,000 energy shield, Dampening Shield would be fine. Arbiter, Dampening Shield is fine. No jewels with stun threshold, you're good to go. However, if your energy shield starts to get above 10k, as you can see, mine right now is 11.2, you have another option. If you feel like you're just not getting stunned quite enough for your liking, you can route beyond Dampening Shield, so just skirt around it, and you save 1 point, because you only have 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, so you save 1 point by doing this. You're going to slap that 1 point right here for 8% stun threshold. To show you a little bit more of the specific info, if I go into POE, you can do this yourself. Go to the calculations page right here. Let me actually go to my Simulacrum setup really quick. So my Simulacrum setup, I'm not using Dampening Shield because I have over 11k energy shield, 11.2k right here, using this one node. If you then go to your calculations page and then all the way down at the bottom right, you can see your stun information. And my stun threshold, according to POE, is 2180. 1283 from life before CI, and then plus 900 from that 8% node on the tree. What I have found is that anywhere from about 2,000 to 3,000 is like the prime sweet spot. You can go below 2,000 and you can go above 3,000, but it starts to get like a little bit less consistent as you get further and further away from the sweet spot. Hopefully that makes sense. So whatever you've got to do to get to roughly 2,000 to 3,000 is what you should do. But the easiest ways to do it is to, like I said, just use Dampening Shield for 12%. Or if you've got too much energy shield, just route around Dampening Shield and grab one of these individual nodes and then have 0 jewels with stun threshold, and you're going to be A-OK, good to go. So now let's go ahead and talk about how you're going to face roll T4 Arbiter. So first thing you need to know is I went ahead and changed my passive tree, and you'll probably notice that I went from 11.2 to 16.8k energy shield, and that's with the exact same loadout. You can see if I throw on my regular chest piece, I'm all the way up to 22k, which is just a crazy number, but that's not what we're going to be using for this setup anyways. In addition to that, you need to know that we're doing around 1.5 to 2 million DPS once we've ramped up our stacks of Withered, so we're not killing Arbiter in like 3 seconds like some builds are, but we're killing him very quickly, so much so that we don't have to interact with too many mechanics. So with all that being said, you have 2 options for dealing with Arbiter with this build. One, you can just go ahead and throw on a pair of 30% move speed boots. You go ahead and swap out Convalescence for Blink on your second weapon set. You just interact with the fight normally. You have way more than enough energy shield for anything that isn't one of the one-shot mechanics. If it's a one-shot mechanic, you just move, you interact with it as you're intended to, and you do the fight normally, blink around, etc. Alternatively, the easier way and the way that's going to allow you to face tank Arbiter is just make it such that you can survive both of his one-shot mechanics. So the flame hallway corridor thing, and then the dropping flame bombs as well. You can see both of those in the intro of this video. Everything else is trivial, like all of his other mechanics. We have way more than enough energy shield to deal with anything else. All that matters is surviving those one-shots. If you can do that, You don't have to worry about blink. You don't have to worry about 30% move speed boots. You don't have to worry about anything. You literally just sit there, AFK, stand still, holding Whirling Slash, and the boss will die. The way we do this is through a couple things, but let's start with the passive tree for now. So of course, for the passive tree, I'm going to recommend come to the POE. I showed it earlier in the video. Go to the Mobalytics Planner, grab the import code, import it here. You'll be good to go. Come to the passive tree, make sure it's set to Arbiter. This is going to be the passive tree. And then come to the items and make sure you set it to the Arbiter item set as well. When it comes to the passive tree, whether it be for Arbiter or Simulacrum, I'm going to trust that you guys are able to look at the POE planner and mirror it one-to-one with your character. So instead of going over all of the little individual changes specifically, I'm actually just going to give you guys the core understanding behind the decisions, so that way you can make it work even if you're a slightly lower level, or who knows, maybe you'll find a way to optimize it beyond what I've done and make something even better. In order to do that, I'm just going to use this quick little MS Paint illustration here. If you can imagine that this build basically has 4 different categories that it's trying to allocate its resources to, everything starts to make a little bit more sense. We're basically looking at damage, AoE, defense, and speed. Let me go ahead and move my camera over just a little bit so you can see a bit better. In order, left to right, damage, AoE, defense, speed. For Simulacrum, it's very simple. We're allocating most of our resources to AoE, a decent chunk to damage, not so much to defense, and very, very little to speed. For Arbiter, the difference is that instead of allocating a lot to AoE, we drop a lot of our AoE points on the passive tree, and we allocate those to defense, so that way we can survive the one-shots. We've still got a decent amount of damage, and we still have very little speed. With this in mind, you can probably imagine that for a mapping setup, it would look quite different. We'd have a lot of points invested to speed. We'd have a decent amount of points invested to AoE. We wouldn't have that much invested into damage or defense because most maps are pretty trivial in comparison to T4 Simulacrum or T4 Arbiter. So at that point, just allocate everything to speed and AoE for more efficiency. Hopefully that gives you like the background understanding of the passive tree decisions, and it should make a lot of sense whenever you're looking at it for yourself. So now that you understand the passive tree, a little simple overview of it really quick as well. For Simulacrum, we're basically allocating a bunch of points down here towards AoE, right here as well for AoE. For Arbiter, we pretty much remove all of those points, remove a couple points right here. We're allocating a bunch of points to just extra defense. So we're getting extra energy shield, more energy shield, more energy shield, more energy shield, etc. We're just juicing up our energy shield like crazy. We don't need the AoE anymore. All we care about is surviving the one-shots. Hopefully, you're good to go on the passive trees with that information. Now, in addition to the passive tree, we do need to do some more to get our fire max hit up to this high of a number. To be transparent, I don't know the exact number it needs to be at to survive the one-shots. What I can tell you is that currently with my setup, the one-shot mechanics are taking me from about 14,000 energy shield down to about 4k. Like 4k remaining. So I've got a little bit of room to spare, but not that much. With that being said, I know for sure that like a 90,000 fire max hit would not be enough. I'm guessing somewhere around 120k is kind of where you need to be. So how do we do that? As you can see, with this passive tree setup, we've already got 89,000 cold max hit, and that's from a cold resistance of 77%. The reason why our fire max hit is so much higher is mainly due to the fact that we've juiced up our max fire resistance all the way to 86%, and this is thanks to a singular item called Inferno Clasp. This is a unique belt. It's giving us plus 4% maximum fire resistance as a natural roll, and then it's corrupted with an additional 3% max fire resistance on top. As far as I can tell, you're going to need one of these with at least plus 6% max fire res. I think you could get away with plus 6%. I haven't tested it, to be clear. So if you go buy one with 6% total and you die, don't blame me. I'm telling you right now, I don't know for sure. I know for sure 7% is enough. So you can try it with 6%. It's very cheap to get one for 6%. Even one for 7% is like 1 to 2 div, not very expensive. And there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either get, if you want a 6% one, you can just get the regular roll corrupted up to 6%, or you could get like a 4 plus 2 or a 5 plus 1, etc. If you want a 7, obviously you need the 2 numbers to add up to 7. However you do that, doesn't really matter. You just got to buy one. That's going to be one big key aspect. The other key aspect is a Pep's Supremacy, a unique focus, very cheap once again. The important line here is the percent of elemental damage from hits taken as chaos damage. I can actually show you now. The reason why, let me really quickly clarify that this item I'm not confident is mandatory. I've done some research that indicates to me that it is valuable. However, let me just show you why I think it's maybe not mandatory. Because if I come into POE, this is what I've tested it with. I've not tested Arbiter with a regular focus, but I can just, I'm using my best judgment here. On the correct item set, with the correct passive tree, the Arbiter passive tree, the Arbiter item set, we're at a fire max hit of 135,000 with the Pep Supremacy. If we swap it to our focus, the one that we usually use for Simulacrum, etc., our fire max hit only goes down by a couple of thousand. And you'll actually notice that our overall effective hit pool actually goes up, and that's because our physical max hit is going up. So do with that what you will. With that being said, a Pep Supremacy is very, very cheap, and there is an added bonus to using a Pep Supremacy, and that's the fact that you can socket in a different type of rune from your regular focus. So my regular focus, of course, I've got an Iron Rune for increased energy shield, but for this one, when I swap to Inferno Clasp, I'm losing a lot of lightning resistance. So when I put this on, as you can see, I'm actually at max fire res, max cold, but I'm not maxed on lightning. Thankfully, this is Pep Supremacy. I just slap a 14% lightning res rune in it because it doesn't have a high energy shield base, so I'm not losing out much there. And all of a sudden now I'm pretty much capped. I mean, I'm not fully capped on lightning. Technically, I could be at 79. But, that's like an issue for me to solve via my items. That's not a problem of the build. I could just get a little bit of extra lightning res somewhere. It doesn't really matter. And with that being said, there's not much lightning damage in Arbiter. Actually, I believe there's 0 from what I checked on POE 2 database. But I'm not going to say that. Don't quote me on that. But nothing really matters, even if it is lightning. So being at 75% is fine. And we're hitting that mark thanks to the 2 lightning runes in Gloamgown and the lightning rune in a Pep Supremacy. Like I said, alternatively, in an ideal scenario, you would work this out to where you have enough lightning res that you could put energy shield socketables in here, but it's really not that big of a deal. You're not losing out on too much by just slamming lightning res runes in here or whatever resistance runes you might need whenever you swap from your belt over to the Inferno Clasp. And just to avoid any possible confusion, the reason why this line on a Pep Supremacy is so valuable, taking a percent of elemental damage from hits as chaos damage, is because we're immune to chaos damage thanks to chaos inoculation. So effectively, with this, 22% of elemental damage just goes to the void. Like, it doesn't exist, we're just not taking it. So it's full-on damage reduction from that regard, but we are trading, 4,000 energy shield, give or take, for that. As you can see here in POB, if I swap my item, I go from 13,896 up to 17,335. Should be like that in game as well. I'll just pull the focus out. We're at 13,896. Yep, we go up to 17,335. So we're trading about 4,000 energy shield for the 22% of elemental damage from hits, taking us chaos damage, which of course we're immune to. Like I said, not sure if Peps is mandatory, but it is what I've tested and can confirm does allow you to face tank the one-shots from Arbiter. And with all of that being said, you should now be fully comfortable to AFK farm T4 Simulacrum and just Faceroll T4 Arbiter. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. If you guys have any additional questions, feel free to let me know in the comments and I'll respond to them as soon as possible. Here at the end, I'll just do a super quick Q&A of some of the most common questions I get that I feel like I maybe haven't already answered in the video. One, I have a lot of people ask me, what stats do you look for on your wand? From my experience, the most important one by far is the gain percent of damage as extra fire damage. Beyond that, you're just looking for increased fire damage and increased spell damage. And then, of course, also you need to have +5 level of all fire spell skills. That's pretty much mandatory. Beyond that, though, everything else I said applies. In addition to that, I've had a lot of people ask me, how do I get my Withered stack so high? So if you notice from the intro, I'm stacking Withered on bosses up to 80% increased. The way we're doing that is thanks to a jewel in our Lich slot that has 10% increased effective Withered in combination with these nodes right up here on our first weapon set. So for our Spear and Focus, we're getting 10, 20, and then 40% increased effective Withered. The important part here, and the reason why this is confusing, is because Withering Presence applies stacks of Withered individually, and each stack is 5% increased damage taken. So what that means is you're only going to notice a difference, or you're only going to see a difference at breakpoints of 20% increased effect of Withered. 20% of 5 is 1. So if you have anything less than 20% increased, each stack is still just going to be 5%, and it'll be no difference. At 20% increase, though, each stack will apply 6% increased damage taken for a total of 60%. At 40% increased effective Withered, it'll be 7% per stack for 70% total. And then 60% increased effective Withered will be 8% per stack for a total of 8%, which is what we're at. Like I said, we're getting 20% from this one jewel, and then we're getting the other 40% from right over here. That's how our Withered is going up to 80%. Beyond that, I've had a lot of people ask me, would increased chaos damage help this build? From my experience and the tests that I've done, I've actually tested this with timers, I can say that no, in my experience, it has not made a difference. And you might ask yourself, well, how does that make any sense? Why does Withered work? Withered increases their chaos damage taken. Shouldn't increase chaos damage work? The important part there is the Withered is increasing the chaos damage that the enemy takes, whereas increased chaos damage is trying to increase the damage of the ignite, which can't be done. So basically, the important part there is whatever damage your ignited ground is doing when you drop it with Incinerate, that's what it's going to do. After that point, once it's been put on the ground, to my understanding, you can't change it. So you couldn't then put on a bunch of special rings. You couldn't swap your items or anything when you've got your spear out and you're whirling slashing to increase your damage. The only reason Withered works is because it's taking that number and it's just increasing the damage that the enemy takes. It's not trying to increase the base number. So it's the same way as Shocked, for example. The monster just takes 20% more damage. So if your ignited ground does 80,000 damage or whatever, or for easy math, 100,000 damage, if the enemy's taking 80% more damage, then it's instead going to do 180k. On the flip side, if you had 80% increased chaos damage, it would be trying to change the 100k number to 180k after you've already cast an Incinerate, which that just doesn't work. So hopefully that makes sense. I think that's pretty much all of the main common questions that I've been asked that I feel like I didn't already answer in this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, share it with your friends. Love you guys, appreciate you, and I'll catch you in the next one. And last but not least, take it easy, chefs.
As you fade away.